microphone. Two bald guys and a microphone. Two bald guys and a microphone. Two bald guys and a microphone. Along bringing in the morning time to rise and shine. Open up your eyes to awaken your mind. Need to make the day count, need to get in the zone. Tune in to Two Bald Guys and a Microphone. Introducing Coach Papa Tim Stewart's his name. Pay attention to his wisdom, it'll raise your game. He wants to see a better world, so he plays his part. Always loving, always giving, cause he's got a big heart. The co-host won't boast, but he can stand on his own. From the state of Iowa, it's that man Kent Jones. He's impressive on the mic and he don't need a cord. And whether hosting or he's hooping, he's controlling the boards. And the one feeding a hungry herd of Americans, make you feel right at home like he's your best friend. Though he's not a city slicker, he's as cool as the fun. Just a witty wisdom giver, Mr. Rancher Run. Set the tone for your day and get in the zone. Tune in to
Two Bald Guys and a Microphone.
Good morning, Tim Stewart, Coach Papa here. We're with Deke Jones on the controls in the producer's booth, and we got a special guest this morning, a retired Marine Colonel George Braun. Good morning, George.
Good morning.
So we've just had our Veterans Day weekend and also the Marine Corps birthday.
Absolutely.
On the 10th, and so this show is here this morning dedicated to the veterans. So we're going to get a little bit of your story, probably share a few of my stories,
Sure.
and we'll see where it goes.
Absolutely.
So how was your weekend?
Weekend was great. I got a new friend from California that I went to high school with, and she's keeping me company, and
Nice.
turns out that we have a lot in common.
So she's here now, or she's still?
Oh, yeah, she's at my house.
Very nice. So you guys went to high school together,
That's right.
and then
And college, actually.
in college, and then unfortunately, your beautiful wife Kathy passed away this year.
She's a widow, too.
When have you guys reconnected earlier or just recently?
Well, it was an unusual situation. She was here. She's got relatives that live in Naperville, so they were going to have a family reunion. So she flew out there and was staying with them, and then she gave me a call. She says, "Hey, since I'm here, let's link up," And so I said, "That's fine." And so they were doing a Chicago tour, and there's a great tour in Chicago, and they saw the Bean and all that sort of stuff. And so I said, "Well, why don't you come on out to Fox Lake, and I'll show you around." And I got a buddy of mine to pick me up on his pontoon boat and drive us all around. And we did a little bar hopping out there and, scenic stuff. So she enjoyed that. And so the irony of this was that we were both starting to cough a little bit. And then she went back to San Diego, and actually La Mesa, just east of San Diego in the foothills and mountains. And she calls me up and says, "By the way, I have COVID."
Oh no!
And I says, "Really?" So I checked into the VA here, and I says, "I think I've been exposed to COVID, even though I've had all my shots and all that stuff, and I believe in all that stuff too." And so, sure enough, she gave me COVID.
Well,
so I says, "Okay, I'm getting even with you." So
the old Marine attitude.
That's right.
that's right.
That's right.
Right. No, but she's a sweetheart. And, we have a lot in common.
How long is she out here for?
Well, she's going to be leaving in a couple of days, but
Okay.
I'm going to go have Christmas with her and her family in California.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
So,
Of course, want to take care of a little business. This show, Two Bald Guys and a Microphone, of course, brought to you through the support of our good friends over at Natural Therapy Wellness Center, www.mchenrymassage.com, 815-385-8190. Massage therapy, acupuncture, Thai yoga, massage. If you are stressed, they can help you be blessed. John and his group of licensed massage therapists know how to take care of business, which is great.
They certainly do. I've been seeing John for a long time, and he's one of the reasons he is one of our sponsors is because of our relationship, and he's just a great guy, and he's been a sponsor since the very beginning, since our days in Harvard.
Yeah,
So it's good to have that kind of loyalty in the world.
Absolutely.
it is. Don't adjust your screens. If you're tuning in this morning, there's not two bald guys. There's two veterans. Maybe we should have named it that today. Two veterans and a microphone. That's why I'm not a veteran. So I'll stay behind and off camera because you guys have done a lot for this great country, and we thank you for that. So,
Well, why don't we just segue into that? Why don't you give us a little bit of your background, your military background, and where you came from, and some of the things that you've experienced?
Well, yeah, I ended up in the Marine Corps. My dad was a World War II Marine vet off Okinawa and stuff like that. And so my mother actually died when I was 2 years old of TB way back then. And so anyways, my grandparents and my dad and uncle all raised me in Gary, Indiana. And then when my dad was introduced to this one she was actually her boyfriend was in World War II, and he got killed over there. And so she was technically a widow, I guess, but they weren't married. But eventually they teamed up, and it was good. And then she started getting me interested in the Marine Corps, because my dad wasn't really trying to push me into it, but so I went into this officer program called a PLC program, it's platoon leaders class. And you during your college summers, you went back to Quantico, Virginia, and you went through boot camp.
So is that the predecessor to ROTC?
No, it's not a predecessor. It's just a different type of program.
Okay.
Yeah, ROTC is basically you're on campus and you wear uniforms a certain time on campus and stuff like this. And in the PLC program, you didn't do anything like that. You just did everything in the summertime.
Gotcha.
So then if you complete it properly, you have a choice. You can either take a commission as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, or you can basically join the reserves, or you can just simply go back on the draft list. And of course, you'd be number one, but you had that choice. So basically, when it came to doing that, actually, it was the second summer that I spent at Quantico. We always had to run the hill trail, and the hill trail it's something you did. It's just a physical thing. You did it with your with a pack and your rifle. And of course, in the Marine Corps and the Army, the worst thing you could do is have a dirty rifle.
Oh yeah.
And so you basically, we had a rifle inspection at 1100, and so we're out there looking at this thing, and one time we're standing in our bald heads and our jockey shorts and stuff, and the sergeant comes walking in there, and we're standing by our bunks and attention, and he says, "All right, all you guys that want to be zoomies," and that's what they called pilots, "you have to fall out and take this here test." That's exactly the words he said.
This year test.
So me and the guy next to me, we looked at each other. We looked outside. We saw the rain. We knew we'd get our rifles dirty. We raised our hands. And that's how I became an aviator.
And so what year did you go to aviation school then?
Well, yeah, right after I graduated from college, I changed my major once, so it took me another another semester to get out, and that was January of '65. And so then I went straight to Pensacola and started flight training.
And was that fixed wing, rotary wing?
Well, you first, they send you through and you learn how to fly a light airplane with a T-34. It's dual cockpit type thing, and then they want to make sure you don't get vertigo and things like that. So, I did like 30 hours in that airplane. And then once you soloed, you then you go to the next step, and then you had to take certain tests, and some went. If you had a high enough score, you go to jets, and then the rest of them went to helicopters or 130s or turbo crap airplanes.
So times are a little different than they were in 1965 here in America.
Absolutely.
So as you guys are both veterans, I mean, what's your stance on? Is this the America that you fought for? Would you do it again today? There's a couple loaded questions there.
Yeah. Would I do it again today?
Yep.
Absolutely. You're in the military and you take your oath of office and so forth. Regardless who's the president, you're doing what he's doing.
Yep.
There are some rules that, if it's an unlawful order, you can refuse and so forth. And I did stumble into the military law area too. I was a squadron legal officer and then a group legal officer because of the real judge advocate lawyer type couldn't show up in time. So the guy that they just pointed to you says, "You're going to be the
You're it.
Yeah.
So
Welcome aboard.
Yeah. So, but it's not necessarily. It's about patriotism. That doesn't have a rank attached to it,
Right.
but it does have a lot of importance to show that you're a patriot. And you can have your opinions, whatever you want them to be, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm not really happy about in this woke environment,
Quote unquote.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Now, you flew jets in the military?
Oh yeah, it turned out I got high enough score to get jets, so I went to Meridian, Mississippi, and the person that taught me how to fly a jet was John McCain.
Oh, really?
Wow. Nope.
And I should have connected because it was called McCain Field, but his grandfather was in the Navy, and they named it after him. And he was an admiral in charge of the fleet, Pacific Fleet.
Right.
So but it was an interesting experience.
Sure.
And then you went on after the military to keep flying.
Yeah, after I went to Vietnam, and I flew a couple hundred missions there, and was in a fighter attack squadron, F-4 Phantoms, and and I came back, and then one time the reason I got in the airline business, we were sitting there and we had a rocket attack, so we were in the bunker, and all of a sudden this one guy's passing out applications to airlines.
You're in the bunker.
So yeah, we're not. So we had nothing else to do but duck,
Yeah.
and hope we didn't get a direct hit. So I filled them out, and then we mailed them, or he collected them and he mailed them all in and so forth. So then I forgot about it, But as came back from Vietnam, and things weren't going too well with my family, and that wasn't looking good, and I had an offer to re-up, and actually they were going to give me an early out. Well, I had no plans, so I went to El Toro, California. I was a West Coast Marine, and then basically I knocked on a squadron's door, and they says, "You need any pilots?" And they didn't have a setup where you went to at that time, where you went to an advanced jet training. So basically, the more senior people in the squadron taught the more junior people what they knew, and they learned, and then that's how they passed it along. And so if you were good at air combat, that was my sport, and then you basically ended up teaching that. So I did that for a while, and then I got to the point where they call it a swag, and that's a 6 month extension. And then at that, the squadron commander says, "Well, I tell you what, I'll send you to Top Gun school but you got to sign a regular commission. And I'm going, that's a commitment, you know. So I'm looking at my personal life and everything else, and I decided, well, I think I'll take a pass on that. And then one day before happy hour on Friday, I went out to LA airport, and then I knocked on a couple, doors out there, American and PSA, and then on the way home, I thought, well, I'll stop by United on the way, and I didn't want to miss happy hour, but I said, okay, I'll just turn in here since it's right there. And it wasn't an office building, it was a hangar. So I walked into the hangar, and nobody is around. And I looked down the hallway, and I yelled, just funny, I said, anybody hiring pilots? And at the end of the hall, somebody says, yeah, we are. I thought the guy was being funny.
Right.
And so I walked down to the hall, and he says, yeah. I said, and then I told him the story, we sent an application. He says, yeah, we got your application. He says, you got time to take this test? And I said, sure. What they had is they had a very expensive test that you had to take that qualifies you for in aviation, and it ranked you and your background and stuff. But United decided they can do their own tests, and they did a short version of this test. And so he said, you got time to take this here test? And I said, sure. So I sat on, took about a half hour. And he says, yeah, you passed this test good and high. And I says, okay. He says, we'll hire you. And I could not believe this. So are you kidding me? And he said, no, you're ready to go. So I leave, and I go back to happy hour at El Toro.
Still made it to happy hour.
I made it, and I told everybody about this, and they sat there with their mouth open. They said, no kidding. So then I decided, and then I went in that direction. But I stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve.
Yeah.
So, and United assigned me to Chicago. And so at O'Hare Field, so I went there. And then as things would happen, I got a divorce and a few other things. And then, so I went to the airline, and then I joined the reserves. So I started flying an attack plane out there, and I eventually flew a helicopter out there and transport. So I actually had a good background in all kinds of Marine Corps aviation. And then, every time somebody says, you want to do this? I said, sure, I'll do that. And the next thing I know, I got a pretty good background in the Marine Corps.
You were at one point a squadron commander, weren't you?
I was actually a battalion commander. And I was probably the first aviator to be assigned to do a ground tour as a battalion commander.
So all those years after not wanting to get a rifle dirty, you wound up in charge of all the guys getting their rifles dirty.
That's right. But fortunately, and this was an interesting story too, because basically we were the worst by combat performance or tests, the military tests. That battalion was the worst out of 9 battalions in the country. And the reason I got it, because people that really wanted a career didn't want the worst battalion. And so I basically, I took it. But the thing is, it was just burnt out. And so I just did a couple things. I turned them all loose, and most of these guys there were all Vietnam combat veterans, and so they had more experience on the ground than I could even think of. But I brought some helicopters in there, and we did a few extra things, and we did some amphibious landings on Lake Michigan. And I told the regimental commander when I was interviewing, I says, we need a 3-ring circus with sideshows. Got to get these people interested in. And then I found out that our drill attendance was pretty poor, and we had a lot of people in Chicago, but we also had a lot of Chicago cops in our battalion. So what I didn't know was going on, our drill attendants started getting good. One, because we're giving helicopter rides to them. So, but the other one was my staff, without me knowing, was going into Chicago, and they go to these people's houses early in the morning, and they say, "Get dressed," and they got the military uniform, and they pulled them out there, and they took them there, but they also took them home.
Sure.
After the weekend was over. But these weren't technically legal things to do, but
Yeah. Recruiting's a little different nowadays.
yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
That's true.
So Shayna, good morning. Shayna asks the two veterans here, how do you feel about the Patriot Act, Snowden, germ warfare? And oh, by the way, good morning.
Good morning, Shayna. Shayna's one of our biggest fans. She's always on the show. We're trying to get her to come on. I mean, she interacts more than we do some days.
Yeah.
But your thoughts on it?
Well, on the surface, it doesn't look like it's that damaging, but it's one of those things that it's how you implement it that's going to tell the story. And so I can't really give an opinion of whether or not it's good or bad just yet.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this answers the question, Shayna, but George approached this earlier. When you join the military, you don't. It's kind of like getting married. It's they may as well say for better or for worse. It is super important that we take care of this country. And yeah, the country's in a little bit of turmoil right now. Is it real germ warfare, or is that a conspiracy theory? It's just some strange coincidence in the world. There's no way of knowing. History will tell us. They're doing their research and their investigation. We do know what we just went through was terrible. But I also know that if I got the call, I would go serve in a heartbeat.
There you go.
So
There you go.
I think my America at its best poem kind of fits. The king was overtaxing his subjects far away. Things were really getting ugly until that fateful day when the colonists dressed as Indians descended upon the ships and tossed the tea into the sea as a cry rose from their lips. You can no longer overtax us. We have no more to give. So take your laws and leave our land. We choose to govern where we live. Things had gotten bad before, but this time was a first that saw America at its best when things were at their worst. And it started a tradition, a way of life, so to say, that has affected all Americans from then until today. Every time we get complacent and start bickering among ourselves, someone comes and tries to break us, to cast our paradise into hell. But every time they do it, they find out like the rest. It's when things are at their worst that America is at its best. Now, this latest interruption that is known as 9/11, as they toppled the Twin Towers and sent thousands into heaven, is just one more reminder to those beyond our shore that we can be your greatest friend, or you can be no more. So take this as a warning. Those who would put us to the test, if you want to try to break us, you will find America and Americans at their best. There's two parts of that poem that I really believe in. Number one, every time we get complacent and start bickering among ourselves, someone comes and tries to break us, to cast our paradise into hell. Well, I've never seen so much bickering in this country. I've never seen so much polarization between Democrats and Republicans, between right wing and left wing, between the patriots and the socialists. There's so much bickering going on that we have to get under control to get this country back. But the second part of that is you will find America at its best. And I do believe that somehow, some way, we're going to rise up and this country is going to reconnect and bond together. I just hope it doesn't take a 9/11 to make that happen. That's my story.
Yeah, I think those are very important words. And I think that people listening or that are interested in what's going on in this country and its future, they can't take the position that it's doomsday here, because basically there's still a lot of people out there. We got a population, 355 million or something like that. But the idea is that, not everybody has been speaking, and so you can't really tell what everybody's thinking. And a lot of people are just watching what's going on. And you have, as the world changes and the people like Putin are getting ambitious, they're testing a lot of things that's going on. And you can see what's happening in Ukraine and everything else. You got people that are going to say, hey, no, this is our country. We want to live free and we want to reap our own benefits. And that's the concept that's around the world, that NATO was backed in, we've had these organizations, for a long time, because that's what stabilizes the world. And there are times where, the situation is such that it shows weakness in certain areas and opportunists try to take over and so forth. And then the world has to react. And that's what we're seeing right now. So there's a lot that's going to come out in the next, I'd say, less than a decade. But, it's not like we're ignoring what's going on, regardless of if you're a Democrat or Republican, regardless who's the president. The people that are advising our commander-in-chief are current with the intel that's around the world and what's going on. We're not just floundering out here.
So if you end up watching the movie The Miracle or whatever it was about the 1980 hockey team, right? When our amateurs beat the Russians, there's a piece in that movie where they're at practice, and these are all kids from different colleges, and they're struggling a little bit, and the coach keeps asking, hey, who are you and who do you play for? And they all come up, like, hey, Kent Jones, Michigan State, hey, UCLA, whatever. And then finally, someone skates up and goes, Tim Stewart, United States of America. So until this great country of ours puts our nation's name on its back rather than an R or a D or something like that, and understands that we're all on the same team, and until we can get that through our thick skulls, it's gonna feel uncomfortable for a while. But there is a point, and I go to a lot of athletic events, and there's a point every game that when that national anthem plays and you're standing there and singing the national anthem to the red, white, and blue, I still get chills. I'm still very, very proud to say that I'm an American, because I still think it's the best country out there. Now, there's a lot of people who don't, and that's okay, and that's their right. And that's what you guys, you fought for and you served for. And is that right for them to express that opinion right here?
I remember that day when I was 18 years old, when I raised my right hand and swore the oath to the United States of America. But a more important day for me was later on in my career, where I got to be the guy who said, raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Right.
And I swore in over the course of my my career, officer candidates, over 500 officer candidates. I was able to swear in to their oath of office as an officer. But as a company commander on 2 tours, one in Woodstock, one in Elgin, guys just go to basic training, that fresh young soul that is just headed off to basic training for the first time. And when I said it, I stared into their eyes. You can imagine me, but it had such an impact on me to be the one to say, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name, and just to witness that moment.
Yeah. So as we're celebrating Veterans Day here on Two Bald Guys and a Microphone, there's a lot of great things, and you guys, get free pancakes at IHOP, and
Get my haircut.
Get your hair cut, and and so there's a lot of good things. My big concern for our veterans is You guys are trained emotionally, trained intelligently, physically, how to take orders, how to defend our country. And then when you get out of the service, and y'all have seen things that no human being should ever see. My son right now is active in the Navy, and I boy, I hold him high on a pedestal because of it. But that reentry into civilian world, that's a tough reentry. And I know we're as a country trying to do more and more and more and more and more to help out that reentry, but that's a tough transition, isn't it? And how did you get through it?
Well, I don't know as if I looked at it that way. And you have to realize that most corporations, way back when, they were modeled after the military structure. Yep. And, you have a table of organization, what you think you need for everything. And then you have a manning level. That's how many people that you can find with the talent you need. And you put that together. And that's not always a full table of organization. But, it's not, I don't think there should be a transition problem. Because I think the real world here, they don't put an unusual stress on a military person. If, matter of fact, if you put you're in the military on your resume, that's a plus, because they know that you've been trained to do certain things, follow directives and things like this, and you have a rank structure, but they just don't call them a rank. It could be your boss and that sort of stuff. So it's not that difficult, I don't think. Yeah. And I don't hear
a lot of corporations today are lined up like the kindergarten. Everybody just running around, cutting things, gluing things to themselves.
Well, we don't need chairs and desks.
Right.
Let's let them work.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think to be more clear on your point, and I understand what you're saying as an officer, because I had that privilege as well. But our enlisted soldiers, they're young men.
And women.
And women.
Yeah, lots of women now.
But they're young, they're impressionable, and we do a great job of indoctrinating them into the service.
Yep.
We do a great job of teaching them to follow orders. We do a great job of teaching them to be creative, to be field expedient, whatever you want to call it. We don't do that good a job of transitioning them back into civilian life. I've witnessed with a lot of the counseling and people I've worked with. When I got out of the military, when I retired, and I was reserved at the same time. So you have your military life concurrent with your civilian life, and that made it a little bit easier. But it is especially a young man or woman who has been involved in combat, who's seen their friends blown up by IEDs, who have seen and witnessed things, as you said, that no person. It can be difficult for them to get that out of their mind, and we do as a country need to do a better job of preparing them for civilian life. And I don't know what that means. I wish I did. I know with our program, Combat Brain Training, we're actually in communication with the individuals who are out at Great Lakes, but they're U.S. Army, and they're responsible for all the inductee sites as well as all the Exodus sites. Those who are getting out of the military and returning to civilian life. And I do have an opportunity to go in and impact that, at least at some level. So,
well, I'm hey, Rich, good morning. Glad to have you with us. Well, I'm under the I like the countries who say, great, now that you're out of high school, or what we would call high school, now go spend 2 years in the military. And when my son went in, he came out a whole different person, different man, and it was the best thing for him. And still today, as he's active duty, is, that's the change and the understanding about respect, about hierarchy, about putting a bar high to stretch to achieve. I think that was the biggest thing. If you were to ask anybody who's been in, anybody who's been in the military, is they're at boot camp, is they set the bar high. They don't they don't go, oh, it's okay, just step over it, right?
That's right.
There was a period of time where the military offered these stress cards to soldiers. So
I remember
when
this
they went
story,
in, they
yeah.
got this stress card they put in their pocket. And if they were feeling too stressed out by the training, then all they had to do was flash this card, and they got to go sit out by a tree for 15
Little
minutes.
timeout.
Well, it didn't take the drill instructors long to figure out a way to get around this. So anytime someone flashed a stress card and they would step out, they would just beat the living snot out of the rest of the ones that were standing until his 15-minute time limit was up. So now all the soldiers are looking at this guy like, you thought you had stress before, brother. Watch what's about to happen. Blanket parties made their return and a lot of other things. So the stress card, it didn't last all that long. But what they did do is provide more in-depth training to the drill instructors, the TAC officers, to recognize when a soldier is, or a Marine, any of them are getting to that breaking point.
Yeah. Rich says, a couple days late, but happy Veterans Day and thank you for your service. Actually, if you wake up and you can go buy a cup of coffee someplace, every day is Veterans Day here in America, because there's a lot of blood that's been shed and people who fought for that right. So even though we celebrated on the 11th of November, we every day is Veterans Day here in America. And why is it that all the military have to pander to the Marines, right? Didn't we we kind of put that Veterans Day by a birthday? It always seems that like before every major holiday or something, the Marines are having a birthday. How many birthdays do the Marines actually have?
Well, they have one on November 10th, but I'm proud of the Marine Corps for keeping that moment alive.
Yeah.
The Army, the Navy, the rest of us, we don't recognize that as a moment. Several years ago, I got to be the keynote speaker at the Johnsburg Memorial Day event, where I spoke about the beginnings of each of the branches of the service, with the National Guard actually being the oldest. Paul Revere and his Raiders were the beginning of what we know today as the National Guard. But the Marine Corps is much, we make a lot of fun of it, especially when George and I are speaking somewhere, we're in charge. We pick on each other a lot.
Sure.
It's necessary. It's absolutely necessary.
But if you from the outside pick on either one of us, you better be ready for a fight.
That's right. No, we do that. That's just tradition.
That is. Shayna asks, hey, how close was Leonardo DiCaprio's depiction of an airline pilot in the 1970s from Catch Me If You Can, that movie? I'm thinking there might be a story there. LOL.
Are you familiar with he was a con man who conned his way into free flights by copying a pilot's badge?
Yeah, I remember the story. It's actually one of my favorite movies, but it just,
It ain't
pull that
easy.
off,
It ain't that easy.
No, it isn't that easy. But the thing is, it points out the fact that we can be really gullible.
Yeah, that's right.
In any environment.
Any environment.
That's right.
And Rich, of course, says October 27 is Navy Day.
Oh,
They're the big brother to the Marines, from what I understand.
they're the Uber for the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Uber.
They're the Marine Corps Uber.
Not anymore, though.
There you go.
Marines have their own ships now.
No, we don't need them.
That's right. They just drop them and go. There you are. There you go. Were you the rock stars? Were the pilots of the 70s the rock stars? Everybody wanted to be a pilot back in the 70s.
Well, I don't know. My son's a pilot. One of them,
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that he knew about until he got into it. And then I have a grandson now that's looking at that possibility too. And at a junior college level, they're having pilot training.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of debate on whether or not there's a demand for pilots in the future because of certain things that happen and so forth. And the Airline Pilots Association, that's the big union that tracks all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not 100% sure there's a shortage either. But, it's how you take the statistic and how you read it. And there's a lot of small airlines that are doing short routes and stuff like this that, the big airlines would cost them too much to establish a short route.
Yeah.
And so they basically connect and the system works, So I don't.
Yeah. Well, and now just with anything, I mean, you have cars that drive yourself, but being a pilot today is a lot different than being it, back in the day when planes didn't actually fly themselves, have all the computer
there's a lot
technology.
to that. And then there's a lot of debate on that too, as far as training is concerned, because you can learn to operate a computer and you can operate an airplane almost the same way.
Yeah.
And
that's something.
there are times where that's a big advantage when you have really bad weather conditions and low ceilings and stuff where you have to depend on the computers to do their thing.
Sure.
But, you're still, if something fails, there's got to be somebody to notice that it's failing and then abort the landing so you don't crash.
Do you ever have a situation where you had to do that?
Not really. I've had some low visibility manual challenges back in the day, but there's recurrent training in airlines. So, you get back in the simulator and then they fail everything on you at the wrong time and you got to figure it out,
Holy moly.
And you have to know the airplane, you have to know the circumstances, and you got to be aware of where you are and what's going on at the time. So, I mean, it's not as simple as it sounds. You can't just dial it in and let it go because the weather changes and, downbursts and all kinds of stuff that's causes crashes. So.
That's why I say anytime that I fly and there's some turbulence, I'm like, this isn't their first flight. They got this,
That's right.
The first time I flew into Las Vegas, it was like, all right, we're going to Las Vegas. Well, I didn't realize that coming in over the mountains, how quick they have to come down, but the mountains always provide turbulence. And we're coming in, like, all right, we're almost there. And whoa, 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 whoa. I'm like, I hope this pilot wants to get home today.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's other situations, where you be flying along, like coming home from Hawaii one time in the middle of the night. It's a great trip because you got to go to Hawaii. So anyways, you coming home at night and all of a sudden, I was in the back of the airplane at this time. Oh no, I was a second officer at this time on a DC-10. And the captain decided, well, a little turbulence, we'll just climb higher. So, then we look up in the charts how high you can go and what your G tolerances are and so forth and so on. And your airplane's weight's important, So I give him the answer to this thing. And I said, but, we only got 1.5 Gs up there. He decided not to go, And so he decides to go and goes up there, and sure enough, all of a sudden, you get this vibration, and I look up there, and there's a criteria. You still have to keep the Mach up or the speed up while you're doing this. You can't be lower than the speed that you got this off the charts. So I get up there and I look, and the captain's not watching. The co-pilot's flying the leg, and we're slow. And the airplane shudders, and I look over there and I says, "Get that nose down." And so they says, you're supposed to be at this Mach number. We don't have the G limit here. Okay, and he says, "Get that." And so he says, "Okay," and he calls FAA and he tells air traffic, "We got to go lower." So he puts the nose where it goes down. So on the way down, we get a knock on the door. First flight attendant. She walks in and she says, "All right, what was that?" No, he says, "Oh, we were flying behind another airplane and it's turbulence, and we just ran into it and stuff." And she
Don't
says,
worry.
"Yeah,
You're fine.
lying through my teeth."
Nice. But
But,
better than having everything go crazy chaos.
Oh,
up
it,
there, right?
it could have done it. But the
Yeah.
people that design these airplanes and the aerodynamics and everything, you have to appreciate the engineering
Sure.
on that. And there's some things that have happened. We had one issue where, it's like when you have the downbursts. These are weather conditions where you have this looks like a tornado upside down, and it just pushes you down. And if you're not aware of what's going on, and there's some things you can see in the clouds and stuff that'll give you some clues. But if you're in high altitude in Denver, or if you're down in Atlanta or somewhere
Right.
like that, it's a different situation. So it's not an automatic computerized industry.
Right. Now there's still skill.
But you really, you need the computerized stuff that they have now. Really is an aid to the pilots and stuff, but you simply still need pilots.
Yeah.
So
Shana asks you guys, military gives you an opportunity to experience different cultures and landscapes. If you couldn't live here in America, which country would you choose?
I'd probably go to Germany. I spent some time over there, and the country is beautiful. The people were fantastic, and you can drink and drive.
Yeah. Just to interrupt, hey, Rich says, "Got to hit my workout. Have a great day, y'all." Yeah, absolutely, Rich.
Thanks,
And
Rich, for checking in.
don't forget, if you go to www.216.net, you can put it right in your earbuds and listen to this great station while you're working out.
Just turn off the microphone. We don't want to listen to you panting.
Just as an FYI. That's right. How about you, George? Where would you live?
I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I've flown all over the world.
Right.
And I've been to places. I've seen Hong Kong when it was before they gave it back to the Chinese, and a few other things. And there's some fantastic places. Singapore I liked, and I liked.
Yeah.
And on the European side, any of the countries in Europe, Paris, London, all that stuff, and even India. All the big cities have a lot to offer, but I don't want to live anywhere else but America.
That's right.
So let's do it.
That's right.
You can go all around each. You got to remember, America is made up of states, and each state has its own unique stuff, and they have lots to see. And there's plenty to see here in the United States.
Yeah. I've never traveled abroad, and so I wouldn't even know. But if you were to, I think outside of America is like the city of Chicago or New York. Great places to visit for a little while, but then but then go back home, right?
Yeah.
Get out of that hustle and bustle. Give me the mountains and a cabin, and I'm happy guy. There you go, right? And I don't know where you could be more free than that. Another good question for our pilot. All that airtime, did you see any unidentified flying objects out there? Any aliens?
No. Now, there are some things that have, got my attention from other reports.
Yeah.
And stuff. And there are, there's our Department of Defense has a space command now and everything else. And they look at all this stuff. There are some things that are unexplainable at this time. Yeah. But I've never seen anything that looked like that. I mean, as a second officer, I was flying, your seat is sideways, and I happened to be looking out the window on the right-hand side, and I saw a meteor come through the horizon, and it just about sunrise time of day. And of course, the heat from the meteor and the friction, the thing just exploded. And I was looking right at it, and I came through and it exploded. And I said, "Did you guys see that?" They said, "What?" I mean, they could see all the smoke left over and everything else. But I mean, there are some things you can see, and like the Northern Lights and stuff like that. Those are really fabulous things to look at.
Well, and you know, with all the conspiracies things out there today is because we're so dialed into our phones and so dialed into technology. I think a lot of people would be very, very surprised at the amount of artificial intelligence that's creating a lot of these things. And I think as people, you have to do a little research and go, is that true? Is that not true? Because it's very easy to Photoshop, you know, President Lincoln right into this, you know, right between you guys. You know, we can certainly do that.
That's true.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
You know,
I've got an interesting question. I've flown quite a bit over the years through the military and civilian travel, and it always affects my, you know, my ears plug up, my sinuses plug up. I mean, you're up and down hundreds of thousands of times.
Well, that's true.
Did that impact your hearing, your anything, or did you just kind of get used to it over time?
Well, it's not a matter of getting used to it. It's just a matter that it does happen at times where your sinuses can get plugged up and so forth and so on. And, you know, your cabin altitude, you know, you go up to about almost 8,000 feet when you're flying at 35,000 and your cabin altitude is 8,000. So you're going to feel that.
Yeah.
And some people's with colds can get, you know, earaches and stuff like that. But, you know, you can basically blow your nose and you can equalize the pressure on the way up if you're not too bad. But, you know, it's not something that you can say don't fly if you have a cold, and you can.
Do you remember your first flight and your last flight as a pilot?
Well, I remember the first flight, you know, when they're doing the training, you know, that was, you know, I had a Navy lieutenant who's about to retire or, you know, get out of his tour. And he was a very calm guy, and that was fun. And I thought it was cool. I didn't crash, you know. and the last flight, didn't even know it was going to be my last flight because I didn't realize that I was going to have cancer at the time. But, you know, I didn't know it was my last flight, you know. So,
And, the cancer was found during a physical, or?
Yeah, that's basically what happened, you know. And I flew from Denver to Chicago, and that was, you know, normally you do something that's around the world or somewhere, you know? And I didn't realize that. And they have this test you took, and you paid $5 extra to check it. And sure enough, it's a PSA test, they call it.
Yeah.
And prostate specific something. You know? But either way, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, once you have cancer of any kind, the FAA ordinance says you can't do anything for 6 months, period, no matter what it is. And so I was, you know, retired.
That was it. Forced out by health.
That's right. Yeah.
Just
I
for
was,
the health of it.
Just for that.
I wasn't even 60 years old. At that time, you had to retire at 60.
Yeah. That's amazing. Of course, you've got two bald guys and a microphone here on 21.6 The Net, brought to you through the financial support of our good friends over at Natural Therapy Wellness Center, www.mchenrymassage.com. See at the top part 2 here with two bald guys, but celebrating Veterans Day. And we've got two veterans sitting right here on camera. And we're so grateful and thankful for your sacrifice and service. And, you know, that means a lot to us. And even though sometimes we may not show it because we're able to act like jerks, it's because you guys fought for our freedoms. That's we appreciate that.
Saw something many years ago said if you can read a book, thank a teacher. If you can read it in English, thank a soldier.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right. So what's next? You guys just get to go around. You get to do some fun speaking engagements, things like that, or What's your take?
Well, we always do a Memorial Day in
Mm-hmm.
Johnsburg, and Tim's been a big part of that for years.
Yeah.
And we do it on in two parts. The village basically sponsors it, and the community
Mhm.
club is a part of it, and the Johnsburg Lions, do a whole lot for it. And then we have individuals that contribute anything we want, anything we ask for. There's somebody around who's going to give it to us.
Yeah.
So we do that, and we have a great turnout, and Johnsburg's as red, white, and blue as it can be.
Yeah.
And we look forward to that every year.
That is awesome.
Yeah, several years ago, they had an open mic during Memorial Day, and I stepped up and did the ragged old flag, and it just hasn't stopped since. And
Yeah.
George has never really written me into the program. He just says, "Stand right here till I'm ready for you."
Yeah.
And we have, over the years, we've had several of your pilot friends have flown their antique aircraft, or sometimes state-of-the-art aircraft over. Several years ago now, good friend Denny Hall was preparing for Memorial Day, and unfortunately crashed and burned and lost his life in the preparation for that. So
Yeah.
we've always remember Denny when he's when we're out.
No doubt about it. He was like the brother I never had, to be honest.
I never saw you two apart.
Yeah.
The thing that I love about military veterans is if they've served, they continue to serve. You guys continue to give your time. You donate your time. You volunteer. It's amazing. I mean, even your career, being a pilot, you were serving so many people every flight. And when I say that, I don't mean liquor people. I mean he's getting them to where they need to go. So I find that fascinating, and I would guess that it's probably high, the percentage, probably at least 80+% that of the people who come back from service that just continue to serve Americans, and it's awesome. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, you can look at each United flight was like a mission.
Sure.
Also, you had certain things to do, and you had to get things done, and brief the flight attendants about the weather and all that sort of stuff. And the flight attendants are great people.
Amazing.
No doubt. They've done a lot of stuff.
That's right.
We don't have time to get in that story, but you were married to a flight attendant,
That's right.
and a lot of times they were in different cities around the world.
Oh, yeah.
They
All right, we're down to about our last minute here on Monday morning. So any last words you guys want to leave the listeners with?
I'll just thank a veteran if you get a chance. We do appreciate it without question. I always wear my Army hat, and even when I'm coaching at the opposing team athletes will always come over and say thank you for your service. And that didn't used to be like that.
That's right. Actually, President Clinton was the first person that actually said thank you for your service to me.
Wow.
I was flying him after he was president from London to New Delhi, and he was there with an entourage of New Delhi ambassadors and stuff like that.
It took that long.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it was very unique. I got a picture of him.
Nice.
And sitting in my seat in the cockpit. He came up and I said, I'd like you to meet my crew. So he was very good at that.
That's awesome. Shannon says, hey, thanks for sharing your well-earned life experiences. It's nice knowing the wisdom might be picked up by a would-be Tide Pod eater. Hey, we got to run. Everybody enjoy the week. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, like, share, subscribe. Go out to www.216thenet and you can listen live at any time. But for all of us here,
This is Tim Stewart. I am Coach Papa, and it is time to get off the bench and get back in the game. And we do approve this message.